So the question I always get is, do you need GFCI protection in your kitchen next to your sink? And the answer is, not always. Stick around and we'll talk about it. So we're just going to take the wire, gently pull down. The cord is pretty much melted together. So there we have our finished end with our... Now, if you own a home that was built in the 90s and you're in Canada, I'm not sure about the US, so my US fans, please like and comment to tell me how your rules are down there. Most of your counter plugs were wired with 14.3. So 14.3 is actually 122.40 volts, which means that you have two circuits to each counter plug. If your home was wired 2000 onward, then there's a good chance that it's done in 12.2, and it means you only have one circuit per receptacle. So before we talk about GFCI protection, let's talk a little bit about placement. So first of all, for every 3 feet of counter space, 3 feet in either direction, you need to have a counter plug. So we have one there, we have one there, we have one there, and we have one there. And one back there, actually. So if this home was actually done in the end of the 90s, so this has kitchen counter splits. So how it works is with two, you can install two receptacles per circuit, and they had to jump each other. So you have one, and you have two, and then you have one, and then you have two, and then you would have had this one all by itself. So this actual receptacle, if you look at it, on the top is a circuit, and on the bottom is a circuit. This is actually split in the middle. So there's no way to put GFCI protection on that. A GFCI simply will not work. Now the only way to add GFCI protection to a split counter plug like we just talked about is to actually install a GFCI breaker, which can be very costly. So our inspection authority doesn't expect us to do that. So in this case, where we have kitchen counter splits, we're allowed to have those without GFCI protection, again, because there's really no good way to do it. If you stick a normal GFCI on there, it's just gonna trip, or you're only gonna be able to use half of the circuit, so there's really no point in it. Now we'll talk about GFCIs. So if your home is wired 2000 onward in Canada and probably in the US, counter plugs within 1.5 meters of the sink edge. So when I say the sink edge, I mean 1.5 meters between here and the receptacle. Anything closer than that needs to have GFCI protection. So that's actually 5 feet. So how we do GFCI protection on newer counter plugs, I'll lay them out and show you. Okay, so on newer style counter plugs, we have to run 12.2 or 12.2 Romex or 12.2 NMD90, and they have to be in groups of two. So one circuit can supply two outlets, two 20 amp outlets. One outlet can daisy chain to another outlet, and that depends on where they land on your counter. If they're farther away than 5 feet from the counter, 5 feet away farther than the edge of the sink, then they do not need GFCI protection. However, if they're closer, within 5 feet or within 5 feet of that sink space, then it needs to have GFCI protection. So if I were wiring this house as per new code, how I would do it is we would run one piece of 12.2 to the counter plug here, and then we would daisy chain over to that counter plug there. And then we would run another circuit from there, and then we would daisy chain over to that counter plug there, or vice versa. The most important thing is this outlet here, which is closer than 1.5 meters, this outlet here, which is closer, and this outlet here all need to be GFCI protected. So how do we do that? Obviously we install 20 amp T-slot GFCI. Now that would go on the line side, and then we'd come out of the load side and down feed to a regular 20 amp T-slot GFCI, 20 amp T-slot receptacle. This would protect this receptacle from this GFCI. This one here would have to be on either a GFCI all by itself with a reset button, 20 amp T-slot, and or it could down feed to this one over here. But in any case, this needs to be GFCI protected. So what do we take from this? If you build a new home, you're required to have 20 amp T-slot GFIs and 20 amp T-slots. You need that GFCI protection, there's no question. If you purchase an older home, which a lot of people do, check with your local electrician to see if you can install GFCI protection, because it is a good idea to have it, obviously to protect yourself. However, in some conditions, like we talked about with the 3-wire and the split plugs, it's not required. So don't always think when you have a home inspector come in on an inspection when you're buying a home, just because there's no GFCI protection next to the sink, that it's not there, or that that's not the case, or maybe a reason why it's not there. If you want to see some of our other videos on how to wire a GFCI, or how we wire a GFCI, click the link up here. And you can also go to our website, which we'll put a link in the description, where all our videos are laid out in a nice searchable fashion. We'll see you next time.